I once was called in to help a problem of a cat who had been rehomed with a new person and they weren't getting along. And the cat told me, this person is old and their wish to pat me isn't pleasant for me. They're trying to dump a lifetime of unhappy experiences into my nice fur. When they pat me, they're releasing a lifetime of junk, and I've just been through a trauma being released from my loving family, and I can't deal with that.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing. And once again, it is Christmas morning for me, as the universe has presented itself another slither of consciousness, an incredible being that has gained their own conscious awakening and their mastery through their own experience. I'd like to introduce Madii Kasem. How are you?
Hello, so nice to be here. Thank you.
I'm so grateful to have you here. And you're one of the facets of your insight and your sensory perception is you're an incredible intuitive communicator with the nature and, of course, animals specifically. And so with that, I want you to share a little bit more with the audience about your journey of how you got to this point.
Okay. So I was born a little bit psychic and telepathic, I guess, into a family where I figured out really early that's not acceptable. And it took me a long time to find out that I'm rather clairaudient. So I did, when I could, study with really strong people, originators with extraordinary abilities and a high standard. And I looked for those people and also lived a regular everyday life, became a wife and a mom and raised children and worked as an elementary teacher for a while. And always, though, the inner calling to evolve and develop these other abilities was always prominent in my mind. And so I collected a few certificates in, I trained in Ho'oponopono. I was an energy healer. And when I took my early retirement from teaching, I set up myself as like an alternative energy healer, angelic meditation teacher, Ho'oponopono facilitator. And I thought I had the best life ever. And then a red-tailed hawk arrived outside the window of the steel condo I lived in downtown Toronto. And I thought, there's something up with that. And that was the beginning of my journey into animal and nature communication. And so I ended up saying yes to her invitation because I wanted more of what she seemed to be offering. And she is the one who really took me into this world of communicating more deeply with all of nature. And I'm very grateful to the fact that, was that a random thing? Was I calling it in? Were my pets helping me to go to a deeper level? I don't know, but when you put out into the world that you're seeking something from your heart, the universe is wired to send you that. And so my package arrived in that rather dramatic Dr. Dolittle format.
Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. And so integrating some of these sensors, how is it your experience today with all this insight and ways of helping people find really, quite frankly, solutions or creating awareness to their what they would perceive as their consciousness? How would you integrate these things into the everyday life of someone who comes to you needing help, insight, healing?
Well, today I don't really offer my services in that form of consulting, although in the background I do try to help other people who show up in my life with those sorts of, if they're curious or they're asking or wherever that fills a need. But I've really focused on being a consultant for people with pets and gardens and actually communicating where they have problems with a dog, a cat, a horse, or the land where they live, because we can speak to the water in a location, we can speak to the earth in a location, the stones that are there. So I've occasionally helped people who have issues with properties or want to evolve their properties, but mostly I'm working with people who have pets, and especially people whose pets are transitioning or have transitioned. I get the question often, is it time to let my pet go? Like, is my pet suffering? When do I call in a vet? Do they want to die at home? These are key moments in the lives of people who are living closely with animals. And it's where I find sort of my specialty has arisen in this area. So people seem to be attracted to me with those sorts of questions. And that's where I give a lot of advice and help, by letting them speak to the animal directly and find out from their pet what's going on. What does the pet want? Is the pet ready to go? What do they need?
Yeah. I mean, you speak on this incredible category within Taoism. We talk about feng shui. So, I mean, we're still integrated into the very nature of constructs that are outside of what we perceive as our physical body. We're looking at how things are sort of put in place to maximize the energetic flow, the flow of the universe, the energies that surround us that are moving inside of us in this physicality. And so we kind of look at things like, finding the cross streams of the energetic charge of the earth. And so I tend to look at the vortexes that are around certain places, which have the highest frequency, highest resonance. Do you normally look at these types of things also, working with the land, with nature?
Yeah, I have. And I trained for a few years with Bill Bueller, the late Bill Bueller, and he was a specialist in what he called the Reshel grid, which is, I think, what you're talking about. It's certain specific configurations of the energetic lines of the earth that he had an interest in, certain parts of that framework. And so I went to, Bill was a former US Navy commander who became this Reshel grid authority and mapped out that instead of mapping out, Navy ships. And we would meet once a week online, or I would travel to Colorado for his workshops. And honestly, I didn't understand most of what Bill said. He would prepare us in advance with tremendous details on a whiteboard and say, don't worry, it all sinks in at the unconscious level or subconscious level. Like, you might agree with that. And, I would just laugh because I didn't understand a word, but then we would go into a space together, which he called synergy, and where he took the karmic responsibility for the group entering into this space. And it was amazing, the experiences we would have together in this deep place, which, Bill never called it meditation. It's slightly different frequency, but his work was always around those points, those energy points of the earth. And he'd give a presentation on that before we went into our group synergy experience.
Yeah. I mean, I do this. I'm out here in Las Vegas, Nevada, so I'll go around the constructs. I was starting on a series on my YouTube where so far I've gone to 2 casinos, and they're definitely constructed to make sure people lose money. And so I give people the hot spots of where to go. I think it's Luxor and Caesars is the first 2 that I've gone to, and I'll teach people how to first experience the hot spots of where there's the highest activity, like within Luxor, there's this ancient burial ground of American Indians. And so the Luxor was dropped on top of that. Then you've got all the constructs of all the spirits that were drawn into the Egyptian vortex aspect of it, including the ancient burial ground of these Indians. So these spirits are there. It's like two gangs operating in the same space. And then you get to sample their energies throughout the whole building. And so I get people to go, look, go through this direction, pay homage to this entity, this spirit entity, experience the spirit spot, and then move in through. And then if you follow this configuration, you're going to have some good luck. And that's sort of like how it works. It's like really interesting stuff. So I get really excited when you talk to me about, the amplitude that you and I are experiencing right now is sort of evidence of how much we're attuning to that resonance, and how you communicate with nature is so powerful. I think a lot of people don't understand that at face value with an energy, everything has an energy field. There's no exception. Nothing. There is nothing that doesn't. Everything is energy, frequency, vibration. So when Maddie's talking to, a rock or a tree or just the land in itself, you're incorporating a much deeper understanding, a conscious collective. So when you speak with that spirit and it gives you an answer or whatever is necessary or pertinent to the individual, place, person, or thing, it's so powerful, the insight and what it will do for someone to change the very outcome of their reality. Is there any specific types of things that people will ask you that is more common or not within your insight with the land and also with the animals? Let's start with the land first, and then we'll get to the animals. Do they sort of is there some kind of common theme where maybe people are specifically asking for a new yielding some more fruits and vegetables from the land, or is it more specific to an incident, a place, person, or thing?
Well, I look forward to the day when people want to ask a nature communicator how to get more, more fruit from the trees, for example, or more growth from the land. I live in an organic farming area, and I should approach the local farmers and see if they're interested, but I think that's maybe a bit of a stretch for some people. I've been called in where people have purchased a property that they want to develop, normally as some kind of holistic retreat center. And so I've been asked, for example, just very openly, like we're having a very open conversation, what does, the earth or Mother Earth want to say about this? Like, where should we put the building that will be for massages and that kind of healing? And it's very interesting to me to see what comes from that, because there's never a repeat. It's always unique. And so I was really honored when someone asked me when I lived on an island in Northern Ontario, and I was asked to consult with that. And I said, well, we're going to need a book. You've got to start making notes, because this will be a process. And you'll look back at the early notes and be really surprised at where the starting point was. And the earth wanted to start by talking about stones and where the stones should be put that would be walkways for people. That was really important for that property. And so that was a starting point. And another family, similarly, in a different part of the province, wanted to create a similar kind of place. They weren't sure what the land was going to be used for, but they knew that they wanted to welcome people there. It wasn't just for them. And immediately I was shown very active crystals below the surface of the earth in certain places. So I don't know. I didn't follow up to find out if what they've done with that information, but I wasn't even physically there. For that one, I did it remotely. For the first one, I was physically on the property. And so they were telling me, oh yes, that boulder is over here. I'm going to go to it now. And we can now we're looking at this. So I think I did it over the phone, and they would tell me the validation of where things were and what I was explaining to them, and we worked cooperatively. I did get called in to help a dying dog in that same property, though, several years later. And so that was interesting. It just seems like, if you have a specialty with nature, you get called in on that one.
Right, right. Is there a would you say your guides led you to this as being more of a mastery in this incarnation, as opposed to, because I can see quite clearly that your skill set, you could apply it to humans at will if you want to. Is there a gravitation to just staying in that sort of like category?
Oh, with the animals and
Yeah,
nature?
yeah.
Well, it's really a pleasure for me. Like, I grew up in the city. I'm really a city girl. And so to have this deeper connection with the natural world and animals is still amazing to me. And so I'm still really hooked on it.
Yeah, yeah. It's just really, really powerful insight. The charge that I'm getting from just your expansion is like crazy to me. But this is also the world that I live in, and I'm very grateful that we get to share the same space of consciousness. But I can see that you could easily apply this to other categories, i.e., maybe people that perceive they're humans. It's just that it doesn't seem to be your calling, or your guides are not giving you that sense that you need to apply it.
Right. Very interesting, though. But I like to tell people, people who we walk by a storefront that might have a bunch of flowers out for sale, and people will stop and admire the flowers and smell those flowers and not even necessarily take them home. And there's a deep exchange that happens even in that instant on a busy street, where people stop and take a moment to inhale a fragrance from a flower that's giving it to them. The deep exchange is happening all the time. We just aren't being taught that that's what it is.
Another captured moment. So how about you explain to the audience a little bit more about when you communicate with the animals, and you mentioned you transitioned animals before. What's sort of the general experience that sort of takes place for someone that's in need of this insight?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, it's like, so if I had a dying dog, and I've been given guidance that you're someone that can help me find closure, communicate with Rover, get into an understanding of what's going on. I was just wanted to see what your perspective was in relation to that interaction with someone that would come to you for that type of stuff.
Okay, well, I trained first with that bird, the red-tailed hawk, and her family, and then I trained with a human, Maya Kincaid, who has a really well-functioning school, distant learning school in Sedona, Arizona, not too far from you, I guess. And we trained blind. We trained with no information. And so when I work with someone who's got an animal who's sick or dying, I ask for a photo, and immediately I know who I'm talking to. The photo is fantastic for me, because then I know the personality. When I connect with them, everything else about their energy field, it seems to be available to me, and it just flows from that. When I trained, Maya sent us a list of 10 mystery beings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And our instructions were say hello and see how you feel for like maybe 2 or 3 months. That's all we did. Say hello and see how it felt. And I could have been talking to a tree that was cut down, or a bee in a field somewhere. Anything was possible. And so we trained blind, a lot like remote viewing, I've been told. And so when I'm given a location and a photo, it just brings the whole 3D into focus, and I'm in a place of compassion with that animal. And the other thing is that I think anybody listening to this can use to access their own deeper connection is that I come forward with a pure and open heart, by which I mean I have no agenda. I have no agenda, and I have to get out of the way in order to hear clearly from another being, just like we would in a good conversation. Get out of the way and really listen. That's huge. And so I think what blocks some people and why more people aren't having these experiences is because we're so conditioned to have agendas and the need to control someone or something else. And if we come forward to any being in nature without an agenda, just to hear from them, they meet us halfway. They're there. And if people want to try this, I'm sure they'll start having experiences of feeling the response or hearing the response in whatever way their system works, whether they're clairaudient or whether it comes in pictures or in sensations. But that's a big part of it, is that there's no agenda. So the client might have an objective or agenda. Like if there's a problem with a pet, I might be told, I want this problem solved. They've got an objective, and I have to have no objective in order to hear the pet. Like, just what's going on with you is a good question then. Instead of how do we fix your problem? How am I going to change you or fix you?
It's interesting. From my own journey and experience, especially with animals, that they tend to take on and transmute the very emotional baggage that their owners have, and it presents itself in their own mortality, ultimately, i.e., the death of their pet due to the emotional content. Because from all the things that we do within Taoist magic, it's like this communication with the animal, and the animal's directive or understanding, because they're just in the present moment. It's like a human being where you're focusing on all the things that could possibly be in the present now or in the past. They're just now, and so they're unconditional. I've yet to really come across an animal that's not unconditional in accepting their another their their pet owner or overseer, or however you want to define the relationship. But in the nature of it has always been with the learning curve of embodying this unconditional love and acceptance that comes with this incredible being that's sharing this on a second by second basis, this need to want to absorb the deficiency of the human and just relate it back as this unconditional love and acceptance. What are your thoughts about that?
That's so beautiful. I want to rewind that and keep that quote about animals. What did you say about the deficiency?
I probably can't even remember what I said, but
rewind and find that phrase. It was very good. Yeah. So, I mean, I do have animals talking to me about that sometimes, and I haven't really tracked it, but it would be an interesting thing to track, even though the person might have a different area that they're placing emphasis, because I have observed that as well, the animals taking on qualities of their person, and they are here to support us. That's really obvious. I once was called in to help a problem of a cat who had been rehomed with a new person, and they weren't getting along. And the cat told me, this person is old, and their wish to pat me isn't pleasant for me. They're trying to dump a lifetime of unhappy experiences into my nice fur. When they pat me, they're releasing a lifetime of junk. And I've just been through a trauma being released from my loving family. And I can't deal with that. I can't deal with, I'm dealing with my own stuff. That was really hard for me to explain to the person who wanted to just pat his cat.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, my observation, I've had this happen many times. It's like, oh, I'm on, my seventh dog. That's really strange. They always get cancer and die. I can't understand why that is. And I'm just like, okay, well, let's have a conversation about where you're at in your own journey of consciousness, and perhaps maybe we could, invite the dialogue of perhaps what it is that you're expressing or how you perceive your reality and what's really going on in this infrastructure that you call your own experience. Because I just, again, listening to your explaining that was so beautiful, because that really is the truth. The intention of the animal is to just remind the owner that there is this unconditional love that exists. This is like your conscious awakening, the beautiful part of this incredible offering, a dog, a cat, an animal, whatever it is. It's sharing with you and reminding you on a second by second basis that that does exist. That's the true default in the nature of reality, which is this oneness and this ability to just be at one with everything. And the love is so it embodies so many different things when you just put your time and attention into just caressing or patting an animal that's giving you this response. The feedback is, I want more. Thank you. What are you doing? Like, this animal is like focusing on what are you doing today? Like, most humans are like, no one cares about what I think or do. No one cares about whether I live or die. No one could care less. Yet I have this incredible little being that literally is monitoring my every thought, every action, and is interested and wanting to please me, wanting to satisfy me, wanting to get my approval. And I think that's the relationship with animals that a lot of people don't realize is happening at a deeper level. But again, that admission that you shared with the owner wanting to pat the animal and the cat, and it's like, hey, hang on a second, I'm literally mutating into all these different energetic disturbances. And this normally comes from my experience, is when the cancer is formed within an animal's physical body. I get people to go, hey, if you're still on the fence in this sort of concept, take 2 jars of rice, pour some water in them, put one jar with your intention to give it love and the other jar with your intention to give it hate, and watch what transpires over the next 24 to 48 hours. That's how powerful your attention intention is. So when you have a relationship with your animal, that this is very in tune. And so, you see the pain and suffering that they go through, and it may be right down to, someone who's completely detached from humanity and is doing horrible, heinous things to their animal, like kicking them or beating them, or some absolutely insane processes that is not from this planet or from Earth. It's some disturbance, but it transmutes. So even your state of emotion, it sort of like balloons into what we would consider a tumor or some type of cancerous growth, because it's this stagnated disorder, this very turbulent sort of like state of energy. What are your thoughts on that?
That was really deep. I don't know if I can respond to that, but I can segue from it. And I had so many thoughts listening to you, and that was so profound. I I think that animals also leave the planet and re-enter with greater ease than us. So I don't think they're as attached to the life, although that doesn't mean we have permission to abuse them. Like I said, I come forward with a pure and open heart in great respect to every other being. But I do notice they have greater ease of leaving and returning if they want than we seem to have. We cling a lot more to the meaning and opportunity here. And I think that, well, I just want to take it to a new notch, and I'm not sure what you're going to do with this, but I've seen once a dog and another time a cat at the transition experience not just leave their body, but drop the relationship to the physical identity and take on a different otherworldly identity when they left and exited. And so because of that, I'm sort of experimenting with my beliefs about, who the animals are and what their purpose here is. And I love how you perceive them and what you've noticed about the interaction between humans and animals. And I'm just exploring this myself and posing new questions because of what I've seen. So are they beings from other dimensions, realities, or planets who have taken up these bodies in order to serve these functions? In other words, is that they're that piece on the chessboard? Oh, I'm going to go be a dog, or like I'll be the castle on the chessboard and see where I get moved and played because I want those experiences of only going in straight lines, which I think is what the castle does. I don't know. I'm not a chess player, but do you know what I mean? I think that maybe their actual purpose is really something like you're describing and not just the more limited relationship that I get called in to solve between people and their animal companions.
That's really a profound insight, because from my own experience, I can only speak on this, but when I interact with animals, there's variables. There's confessions of having past lives as a human, and one specifically comes to mind. I remember coming across this particular cat who had past lives as a tiger, a great white, an elephant, and then transmuting into this, what seems like a domestic tabby cat, and loved all the experience of that. And with that came a different presence where it was a far stronger energy. And I honestly feel like it's sort of like a profile of a lot of cats that I've experienced, where they have this knowing where it's like, hey, look, I'm going to throw you a bone when I want to, but also understand that I'm very aware of myself, and that, this is part of perhaps your journey of awareness, that you realize that this comes in the form of boundaries. This comes in the form of you looking at things a little differently, that you can't just come and grab me and start patting me. I will show you evidence that I also can process this experience. And if I share, I share. If I don't, I'll make it very clear where, ouch, oh, Sylvester just scratched me. Yeah, because you're not listening. And maybe that's part of what you need as part of your conscious experience, is in interacting with this energy that seems so limitless and endless and loving, but in turn it also has a level of limitation. Whereas you've kind of find with dogs, and that's my experience, that most dogs tend to have this unlimited sort of like unconditional, almost like as if they're just like being hypnotized by a cult leader, where they're just no matter what, I'm on. What do you want? How do you want it? I'm gonna please you. I'm gonna satisfy you. I'm gonna do whatever you need. Whereas cats are sort of transmuted into a certain type of personality that is a learning curve for many cat owners, that they may, resonate with the very presence of that cat, and then you can literally look at the owner and go, "You were definitely a cat in the past life. You had Manny." Like, it's like this is you transmuted into a different form. And then there are people that are like, "Oh, I just want a cat to pet." And this is a part of learning that your human experiences, you don't have any boundaries, and maybe you need to learn to sort of value yourself. And then once you value yourself with that lesson, it transmutes into, being unconditional and limit. And it's funny because this is what I noticed: the second someone identifies with this fluidity, the cat embraces the owner so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, they're getting this almost an unconditional. It's very similar to a dog, but there's like this learning curve. What are your thoughts on that? Have you observed anything like that before?
Yes, that's really beautiful. I have a friend, Deanna, in Colorado, who has rescued a lot of cats and dogs over the years, and I've tried to help her using my communication skills. And she always says, "Oh, that dog or that cat is such a teacher to me or to us." And she's so aware of that. And I think my takeaway from what you just said is that this has been educational for me. I'm an educator. And this has been educational because I want to talk more deeply now with people about their pets as teachers. Like, if I bring the teacher role into the conversation, that'll open up maybe not an answer to the question the person is asking, but maybe what they need even more. So this is something I'm going to add into my practice. Thank you. It's really huge. I recently got called in to help a woman who has rescued a feral cat. She lives in Belgium and outside of a town, and the cat showed up at their door, and they've been putting out food for it, and the cat started to come in, but now the family's moving, and they wanted to know, would this cat like to be a pet? We want this animal to be a pet to us, but this is a feral animal, and we don't want to interfere in its life path and its journey if it needs the farmlands and the wild. And after our conversation, the person got back to me and reported, there was a shift, and the cat comes inside and stays much longer and seems to know. Well, actually, the cat during the conversation said to me, "You mean I won't be a visitor? They want to adopt me?" And so the cat knew it was a visitor, knew it was a welcome visitor, but didn't know they wanted to adopt it, and it knew that word. It used the word adopt. And so the cat was just thrilled, although the cat doesn't know what that means, like being an indoor-outdoor cat, or maybe moving into a more urban setting. But, they let the cat respond after the conversation, and the cat, I've been told, is spending more time in the house, seems to be relaxed in their company, seems to be saying, "I'll adjust to being your adopted animal companion." And so that was really beautiful to have this very natural segue taking place. And that's because that family is so open-hearted and sensitive. And and very nice of them to let me know what happened next and to tell me there was a shift, because I don't always get to hear the follow-up, even though I might sometimes get validation during a conversation.
That's just beautiful. Yeah, I was getting a very clear, "I'm ready to stay, bring me along for the ride," and most people wouldn't assume that would be even a thing. But again, this incredible learning curve is just like how my children are my teachers. They're my gurus. It's like all of a sudden, I have 6 children, so all of a sudden it's like you're bearing witness. And for my wife and I, we've been involved in all our the birth of our children, in the sense that we're the ones. I'm the one receiving my child into this world from my wife, and we do the whole thing.
Wow.
Maybe we get a little witness of a midwife looking at us, going, "How did she just do that?" She sat there looking like she was just like watching Oprah for 30 minutes, and all of a sudden there's this breathing being into this world, and it's just a state of consciousness. And when you sort of attune to it, everything becomes effortless. It's like almost like people are merging into this idea that need to be resistant to the birth of this incredible being that they've been a participant in helping co-create with the universe to be present. And so, the idea of birth is almost like a contractive thing, when you understand that it is far from that. It's an expansive thing. And when you expand with it, it becomes effortless. And all of a sudden, it's like, I'm not spending 47 hours attempting to push this being from myself. It's I'm being at one with this, and it's an expansive moment of a reminder of consciousness that we're all part of this collective. And so, I just find that feral cat is just so happy. And it's also another message from, the family, that, to realize that, accepting themselves, valuing themselves, realizing how important they are, and that unity that they're looking for, which is sort of like a community that they created from having a family, husband, wife, children, however you want to put the configuration. That animal was another validation of that. And then you can now start branching that out. And then it's sort of subsections of the individual, the parents having, this issue with validating their self-worth. And it sort of translates right down to this beautiful gift that came out from the cold, and it's just showing them some attention, and they want to just embrace it more and more. And it's transmuted into this realization that now they can start accepting who they really are. Now they can start valuing who they really are through this unity and this bond that comes with community. And that this incredible being, this cat, is giving them all this stuff. And you and I are just like oscillating and surging with all this energy, the collective consciousness we're having. And it's so powerful because we both can appreciate what we're speaking on. What are your thoughts on that?
Really beautiful. I love it. And that I love how you take it to a deeper, more expansive level. In terms of what was going on with that one little family. And I did tell them, you're creating the world I want to live in. So the other element here is, as people start to experience, living from the heart, and like you're talking about, living a less fearful, more loving life, like the birthing experience being something that is, there's no reason to have fear and to follow the present paradigms. Like, that was incredible, the way you and your wife together embrace that birth experience. I did natural childbirth with a few, what do we call it, little safety nets around, because I was the only one of that consciousness. And so, I put a few safety nets around, but I did, there are some wonderful instructions on how to let go and embrace what's real in that situation. Like Frederick Leboyer has some books from, for women that are still available, even though he's no longer available, on how to have that other experience. And I think as people start to step into life with, from whatever model makes sense to them, there are so many entrance points into living more consciously. anything that helps you access those deeper levels that are within all of us will open these doors. And then life becomes just a very different experience and journey. But I love the way you talked about that little family embracing themselves when they embraced the cat, because that was definitely what was happening. And there was so much joy. And it's really nice to be part of a picture where there's a lot of upliftment and joy. And I think that when we engage more deeply with animals or any elements in nature, that we do that. It is a pathway to living with greater joy and greater ease. And I even see it as an end to terrorism, actually, and an end to violence and war. Because once you know another being is conscious, it is more difficult to exploit them. And as we exploit others less, we are naturally uplifting ourselves and being more cooperative and loving more. And then the world is completely shifted and transformed. So there's no place for the other to exist. So I'm looking forward to the day when everybody will want to communicate more deeply with the natural world around us, because like you said earlier, those trees can tell us what we need to do to produce more fruit. And I once read a fabulous book by a channel. I think he's a trance medium, meaning he leaves his body and another being actually is the one having the conversation with the interviewer. But it was a fascinating conversation about how one day plants will be able to tell us, well, if you harvest me during this particular time and you mix me with that plant over there, I would be really good for those stomach problems you have. And we can hear from the plants themselves. I think that is coming.
Oh, I agree 1,000%. It's funny you bring me to, this one thing that I had a property at one point, and the house on the property is surrounded by eucalyptus trees, and people were like, "Well, you should cut those things down. They're a not nuisance. They're going to fall on your house and whatever." And even to this day, decades later, the trees created shelter for the house, and they grew over the house itself. And my relationship with the trees was that my love for the tree is the same as my love for my son, and it's unconditional. And for someone to take its life because they feel like they're afraid that it's going to do so. If you communicate, as Madii and I are talking about, the inner understanding of that is they blossom into this level of support, that foundational support that comes with not just the roots that they have within the Mother Earth, but just the surrounding, what it's doing for your very own conscious growth and your physical growth, the environment around you. And so when you look at this property, you'll drive up a hill and there's houses all over the place, trees chopped down everywhere. And this property has the trees growing around the house and very strong. And people are like, my goodness, can you see the wind blow? It's moving back and forth. I'm like, it's just expressing the very elements that are being shared with it right now. And it's only empowering and strengthening the sacred ground that it's growing from. And so, I always, the first red flag from me is when someone says, we need to cut this down. We need to recycle what's going on here because it's dangerous. These trees could fall. And of course, the collective consensus of fear is such a commodity that people love to buy into. And in actuality, it's nothing more than a delusion and a sidestepping. But then we get back to the understanding of nocebo and placebo, right? Just that concept that if you want to feed into it, it will become materialized into your reality with your thoughts and intention alone. So, I mean, the idea that this is going to happen. So, years later, the houses grow around this, the trees grow around the house, and people are they're amazed that this is taking place, and they haven't fallen. They never will. They're just very grateful and happy to be home. They're grateful to embrace the home itself and the people that are in the home. And in some ways, they give the family shelter from the wind, shelter from the elements, and they grow together. And with that, you have this incredible environment that you get to nourish your soul with every day you wake up, and you're surrounded by this incredible expression of Mother Earth, in my opinion. And this is how your journey and all the things that you do to help people understand this true nature of their connection with the earth, their true nature and connection with these sentient beings, these incredible spirits that are in the form of, these gorgeous animals that people attach themselves to. It's like, this is the true nature of everything.
Thank you. It is the true nature. So well put. I once had a house in Toronto, my first house, and I was working as an elementary teacher. And there's this idea, if you're a teacher, you should be able to afford a house. So I'm raising my children, and we finally get a house. And when I go into work, my colleagues wanting to share the happiness are like, how do you like being in a house? And I'm like, I love my house. And they're like, oh, but aren't you afraid? Because I had just separated from my husband. So aren't you afraid being in a house? And I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought I should be afraid. I was just really happy. I love my house. I'm just really happy. And it was a corner property in downtown Toronto, but for some reason surrounded by trees. I've always been surrounded by trees anywhere. It's sort of crazy. So I was in this little property, but it was a corner property and had a lot of trees. And so I realized when I came home from work after a couple weeks of hearing this from different people, that I had taken that into my energy field. I was aware that I couldn't get rid of these thoughts that had come in from other people, not my thoughts. You should be afraid. So I went to the trees and I said, will you please protect me? I need you to protect me. You're my guardians. Thank you. And then I didn't think about it again. I let it go. I'd given it away to the trees. It was their problem. They were going to take care of it. And so I went on, just living my life. And in the spring, my friend's husband, who was a landscaper, came to help me with the gardens and show me what to do. And he said, Madii, I have to tell you, something weird has happened with your trees. Oh, no. Oh, yes, something very strange. And he said, I don't know how, but over the winter, your trees have grown over your house. It's impossible, but their branches have grown over your house. And this is maybe not a good thing, because where the branches go, the roots go, and you don't want those in the pipes of your house. And I said, oh, it's my fault. I asked them to protect me, and I didn't know trees are literal. I didn't know that they would reply by moving their branches over the building. I said, don't worry. I'm going to release them from the contract, and they'll grow big and tall through the summer. I'll just fix it. So I learned in that moment, those trees were literal. I hadn't given them enough information.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a beautiful, collective relationship that we as humans can have with nature. And when you attune to it, I've had past experiences where I've had a gardener come in, and I just asked them to trim some grass, and next minute they're cutting branches off trees. I'm like, oh no, dude. I hate to tell you that you're creating your own limitations by doing this stuff. And second of all, you should never have, without consulting with me first, because I'm the representative of this tree, that was even a thing. And the outcome is always reflectant, I find, on the karma model of the individual. So when you do things like this, and if you really operate in a duality, it will tend to ripple back into your everyday expression, and that's just part of the sort of the inner workings of what we're experiencing within this duality. And ultimately, when a Taoist sees life as one, each side of the mountain, one is yin, one is yang, you go up the mountain and you merge at one point being one with all things. This is the true nature of the experience of the humanist, realizing the present moment is all things, the mother of all things, the Tao. And we don't stutter when we speak on this, because that's the true essence. That's the center point of creation. And it's funny how the numbers that we immerse ourselves in, the highest number is 9. And it's strange how the cycle of what it takes to create a human being is 9 months. There are no coincidences. I mean, we could go deep on that one. There's there's such a great representation. And when people are like, hang on a second, did you say the Tao is the mother of all things? I'm like, yes. I'm very clear on that. And so we actually have, like, within our own rituals, we have certain sort of scepters that we use, and specifically there's one scepter which is a Ru Yi, a Rai Yu, and it's in the form of a uterus because it's the access to all things. And so that is the birth. The uterus is the universe and the birth of all things. People may consider there's a certain point through the history of what we call existence, but Taoists are very clear that there is a creator and a creation and where it comes from, and we always reference this. I mean, and it's like the epiphany that you and I are having right now is that true understanding of a deeper awareness. And so we speak on this, and then we go to what we call the magnetic fluidity, which is what some physicists would call 0 point. And it's actually the yin essence, the magnetic fluidity, which is the pure essence of everything, which would be reflected on what we call chi or prana. It's life force. And that comes from that. That's so powerful when people come to that realization that that life force, that yin essence, i.e. water, it's right there. And so we sort of go to a high level of consciousness that goes from electromagnetic, being the 3D duality, to this resonance that goes beyond the 3D. And now we're in this state of consciousness that can be translated back to a 3D. And we're altering this stuff because you're coming from this place of the present moment, the now, the Tao.
And so I think that's why we're able to speak with elements like water, because using your model, I think I'll try to get close to it as we as the essence enters us. We are wired to be able to translate that, and our brain will turn it into whatever language we use, and we can hear it because we're equipped to automatically translate these essences or vibrations and frequencies that of the life force. It's a life force. And when our life force comes in contact with this life force, we have the ability to translate it. And so if we ask, we get the answer, and our brain will translate it into whatever language works for us. And I think for some people, the language is very physical and they just feel it within their bodies. People who feel they're empaths, they feel the answer. And for people like that who want to also hear more clearly, I recommend they take that feeling and then unpack it, go deeper into that feeling. That's their entry point. unpack that, and within that, they will receive whatever the greater, even greater message is. And some people here some people are wired to be able to receive this information as if it's being keyboarded to them, as if they're receiving an email in their heads. And they sound like they're just reading an email to me when they tell me what they're receiving from water or another being. And so I think that life force you're speaking of, because we have it as well, is this point of connection that is available to us. Mm-hmm.
Oh, 100%, and it's sort of it's validated in so many different ways. Just the connection that you and I are experiencing through this incredible conversation, to right down to, a quantum physics model of the 0-point energy, which is the super glue that holds everything together within the entanglement model. And that sort of becomes present past any sort of anecdotal sort of hypotheses, is just Madii experiencing any sort of connection that you have with a client, whether they're in Belgium, whether they're around the corner, whether they're in the same room. You can transmit that and attune to that instantaneously, which would be an experience that is validated by your own experience. So that is second to none. And so, it's strange. I had a student that studies this stuff in a scientific level, and he was studying the nucleus of a human cell. And I've taught him for years about this understanding of the magnetic fluidity, this resonance. It goes beyond the union of electromagnetic. And so what happened was, this whole thing was being taught to him, and he would transmute it into his 3D reality through a manifestation, magic, healing, things of that nature. But there's this ritual that we do where you observe the death of a star, the rising of the red phoenix, and the accessing of what we call black hole energy, which is 0-point energy. Mm-hmm. And so this is the resonance that we speak of. And now, of course, it's being translated into science. And so people are talking about the event horizon of the black hole, the lip. So it's like, as you merge towards that black hole, you go from electromagnetic to this resonance, which is all things. And it's abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. It's not the ominous idea that it's a vortex sucking the life out of everything. That was an absolute flat out lie that they're coming to realize through what they call the unified field theory. And so that unified field theory is validating what we've known within Taoists for tens of thousands of years in our relationship with the universe, and those whispers of that universe that transmutes through our very expression. But in any case, he was studying this cell, and he came to me and goes, Shifa, you're not going to believe what I found inside the nucleus of a human cell. And I said, what? Black hole energy. Oh. What are the chances of that? And so this is where Madii and I sort of have this consensus of like, we're resonating with our own, conscious collective, and we're experiencing that. And I know OGs of the channel, my students, people that know my material, will be able to express this collective that Madii and I are experiencing right now, and this amplitude of energy that's pulsating through our physical bodies as we're going through this incredible conversation. And it's like that sort of attunement, and then the validation of the 3D just solidifies this whole state beyond just a conversation or a thought, or maybe, am I experiencing something? I'm not sure. No, it gets to be validated. And that is so important for the human experience to go further into exploring consciousness, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So everybody can have their own validations if they want to do the experiment, and it'll come to them in whatever way is the model they're operating with at the time. And if they want to, try the experiments with nature, I mean, when I recommend, let's say you're out as a pedestrian and somebody's walking a dog. Dogs are always needing to be walked, so it's inevitable you'll come across a few. You can open your heart, the telepathy I use is not mental telepathy. It's integrated into the heart center. And so I think it helps to connect to your heart in some way. Maybe you don't need to, but I, do a quick check-in, connect to the heart, open the heart, and from there, say to the dog, hello, how are you today? I'm exploring communicating with dogs today, and see what the dog does. And if you try it enough times, there'll be enough animals who will want to help you along that you'll get a response. And that can be a way in. The dogs can be a way into the world of animal communication and nature communication. Similarly, a tree, although they don't typically have faces, but I've known trees that will produce a face if we need it. So when I was having my own early lessons with the red-tailed hawk and her family through a large window that was in my condo at the time, the energy of that fogged the window up. And so the seals broke on the window and you couldn't see through it. And so the bird came to see me through a different window after we'd always communicated here. And that window had a nearby tree. And so the next day after my first lesson over there, I opened my room had a huge industrial blind, and I opened the blind and the tree had a face. I'm like, what? Whoa. I mean, okay, these were my early days, and it was just all fun. It's still magical and fun because you never know what another being is going to want to surprise you with. But so the tree had a face, and the tree had some messages for me. And then the next day, I lifted up the blind, eager to see a face, and it was just a tree. So I've had boulders and trees change their energy in order to create a form that appears like a face, because we need faces. We're so conditioned to communicate through faces that beings that don't have them will move their energy around in a way that looks like a sort of funny face. And in order to give us a focus and to help us come through with our attention so they can deliver a message. So that's a game you can play with trees if you like being around trees. So there's some tricks for people to try to access nature in, wherever they may be through dogs. I'm recommending dogs. Hey, dogs, hope you like the referral. And trees. Hope everyone's happy for the referrals from Madii today.
Yes.
People more deeply into communication.
No, and I mean that can also be translated just in their relationship. In my opinion, from what I've noticed, is when you just have that dialogue where you're expressing how you feel towards that plant, that tree, and it will exhibit its appreciation for that dialogue by its growth, its expansion. So if you have vegetables, speak to it, have a dialogue, have this incredible appreciation and sharing this unconditional love and acceptance for it, and it will bear yield a piece of fruit, a vegetable, whatever it is. It will show you by its own growth, it's the nature of its appreciation. And then, you just have this dialogue with all these things around you, and you'll be pleasantly surprised with the outcome, just the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
And initially, if people, however they're experiencing it, just start with your inner voice and, see how it transcribes it translates into your very own experience. And that developmental skill will be shown to you through your own experience. And there is no real right or wrong way how that happens. Just for the audience to realize that, I believe that I speak this way, and Madii probably agrees with me, that there is the developmental skill will be acquired by you at your own pace as consciousness shows you where you need to gravitate to. Just the sense of understanding these fundamentals, take from our conversation a sort of a template that you can expand on or refine, but use it to develop your own relationship with all these things. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and as you said, it's the simplicity of it. I mean, there are so many complicating things in our current world, but the simplicities that you're speaking of, even though you're talking about very complex physics, when you talk about, the nature of reality, the black holes and electromagnetic frequencies and what's beyond that, it's still very, very simple to access it because you're talking about the foundational principles which are running through everything. Like you said earlier when I spoke about working with Bill Bueller and synergy, it's, the essences of the creation that we're all in together are very, very simple. And so these things that I'm experiencing that seem so magical and fantastical are really just communicating in the simplest possible way.
Yeah, I could say it better myself. It's really profound. It's that simplicity is just the birth of so many things. I kind of attribute it to being childlike in your nature and just accept things at face value. And when you enter into that connection, just with that framework, all things will be realized. All things will be revealed to you, without the agenda of, well, it's got to be a certain way. It has to happen this way, that way, something else. I read a book. The Jade Emperor, one of my teachers, always reminds me, when you accept you know nothing, you know everything. And
Wow.
so it just all just opens up, and that childlike nature is how things become realized. If I took any one of my children right now, even my son, my eldest son, who's 12, still believes in Santa Claus. Why? Because I haven't changed his viewpoint of reality, and I choose not to. It's for him to decide and discover what is the true nature of things. He can sample the frequency, energy, and vibration of Santa Claus. So it's very tangible and very real to him. And he'll remain that way until otherwise, through his own journey. But I could take any of my kids and go, listen, Santa Claus, Bugs Bunny, and Barney are turning up for dinner tomorrow. And they'll be like, oh, what am I going to wear? Am I going to be okay? What do I, who? Because there's no need for disbelief. And that power of that realization, and that with that comes this moment, this present moment, that we access that 0 point that we're talking about, because that's when you can affect change in this 3D reality, where Madii can attune in all different dimensions to talking to the land, talking to plants, talking to individuals, animals, and get a greater nature and insight of what their message is. Very direct, detailed information that their owners are like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. It's made so much sense from me in understanding how my relationship is with this animal, or how my relationship is with the land that I'm living on, or a plant that I want to acquire, or maybe not. And and I say maybe not because I would suggest for anyone to have that dialogue with your plants and decide, if you go to a nursery, that this is a fit, that plant may very well say no. You don't know, and you need to have that relationship to decide what they want, whether they want to share with you or not. But I mean, let's be honest, it's very seldom, if not ever, that I come across a plant that doesn't want to embrace this collective love. Share that with, and so it's so funny when people talk about, plants they've got these anti-nutrients in them and they're trying to kill us, and you don't want to consume them. Listen, if they're in that position and that's what they're here to do, then you're going to receive incredible nutrient value from them, and they're going to embody part of you physically because that's what they're here to share with you. But the idea that they're here to destroy you and they're of no value, which seems to be a consensus. I have no idea where that came from, but it's a groupthink process right now when it comes to nutrients and consumption of food. Maybe it's oh no, I don't want to negotiate with the idea of harvesting a plant, but I'd rather harvest a sentient being like a cow, or I mean, anyway, I think that's another topic that we could get onto. But I mean, it really is sort of like dismantling your connection with this consciousness and realizing that even though someone's delivered you the idea that you're eating a steak, it is not a steak. It is a part of a once living being that now is you're consuming. And so there's it's part of a collective, because when you tap into that information, I can instantly see the life cycle of an animal and what's taken place to that last point before they're now looking at potentially being an offering to you on your kitchen table. This is a cycle, and that means that if you believe in energy, as people that are watching this channel do, that there's something that's coming in, so you're digesting that, or you're now approving of that very life cycle. That if you take a pause and you start resonating at this frequency we speak of, it doesn't enter your field. It's not an option. You're not looking to take the life of anything. You just become embodied with all things. And quite frankly, when you attune yourself to the energy within Taoism, I mean, an optimal sort of cycle of consumption for sustenance is a meal every second day. And that's it's like, whoa, hang on a second. And so when you understand the nature of food and then the sustenance, the nutritional value, and when you concentrate that, if you ever get to a point where you can attempt this or ponder it, maybe as a contemplation, when you do it, you'll have more energy than you know what to do with. And like the great cycle of observing that is a child. How do we know optimum health, and how do you know when physical bodies are really optimizing their very existence? Is when you look at it and you observe a child. They get up and they're embracing life. They're just excited to be aware of all things around them. They just look at this cup and go, oh, wow, it's got speckles on it, and it's round and it's red, and they're in awe of this present moment.
Yeah.
And when you observe a child, that's what happens. Like my children will literally get up and it'll be 5 o'clock in the afternoon and be like, you know what, I'm hungry. Because now their body's going, hey, look, we need a little bit more sustenance. But the efficiency of the physical body is evident by the fact that they are embracing their life, the present moment, and they're just embodying that, and they're expressing it through just loving life as it stands. Present before them. And that's when you really understand. You look at a child and you go, okay, now that's when I know my body's working efficiently. Now if I rewind or dip into a past state of awareness of how that was when I was a young child, I can now embody that and reset and put my physical body into a default of that very state, and now start resonating there and stay there. And so, the consumption of food is not overrated, but it needs to find its place, because a lot of people tend to be misdirected by how they utilize it. Now, that's really sort of high level sort of contemplation, the idea of eating one meal every second day, but it would represent itself in your actual efficiency, mentally, emotionally, physically, and ultimately spiritually. But people get gobsmacked by the idea of it, and then when they actually apply it, and they just the idea of just maybe one meal a day, and then people like, I have more energy, I don't drink coffee, I don't have stimulants, I don't eat sugary foods, and yet when I eat my meal, I'm very grateful, my body embraces it, it absorbs the nutrients, and I have this incredible abundance of energy. And the body works efficiently this way. And
Oh, oh,
there's a mechanism called, you may be familiar with fasting, but when you get to a certain state, there's what they call autophagy that takes place within the chemistry of the body, where it starts to devour all the irregularities within your physical body. So if there's a dysfunctional cell, it will consume it and disperse it. And so you have this, like, if people want to visualize, have you ever seen those little Roomba things, the things that you put on the ground? They go around sucking up dust in your house. Not really efficient. They're like a little robot type of thing.
yes, yes.
But yeah, it's really the individuals releasing the Roomba in their physical body to regulate and attune the energy. And so it's always good, in my opinion, to once in a while get into that state where you become more efficient. And then ultimately, things like the physicality, blood sugar regulation, people that are confronted with the idea of metabolic disorder or the idea of the words metabolic disorder, all come back to the very understanding of the insulin production and how insulin sensitive or how insulin resistant you are by the choices that you make. And so the physicality perspective transmutes by what you believe in. So all of a sudden you're subject to, this Western diet, this Western philosophy, this Western idea of how I'm supposed to consume 3 to 5 meals a day, and I'm supposed to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks in between. And it's a programming. And it's not really optimally how your physical body is going to represent itself, but it's for the individual to discover that. But I often help people find that moment. They go, oh, wow, I never thought about it like that. Let me try. We're not I always want to remind the audience, it's not about starving yourself. It's about making your body work, or not even work, but generate and hum with this consciousness and be part of the flow, what we call Wu Wei, which is effortless action. And so you flow with the energy and it moves through you, and you have this torus field that's being generated and all these vortexes that are around you that are parts of the expression of the universe. And you're moving through, as we talked about briefly, these grids, and you can optimize yourself. And breatharians are conceptual or just an idea, but they're actually not. I'm very familiar with transmuting energy and sustaining and strengthening and fortifying this physical body through that. That's part of like internal alchemy for Taoists, is to maximize and up the level of energy that the physical body obtains, and then saturate the cell so that you can take it for a longer period of time through this incarnation, and you get to operate as if you were a child right up to your last breath, so that you're experiencing your life in its very present moment, not the idea of you're working towards death. You're working towards limitations. You're working towards dismantling of what you see as your physical body, which is more the subsection of the dialogue that you get in the background from media, from news, from environment, that leads you to believe that you need to grow sick and old, and not in the complete reverse, which is where you see a lot of, yogis or, gurus that actually become more childlike as they get older. And people are like, what is going on? This person, they get it, in my opinion.
Yes, that's fantastic. That's a theme I've been wondering about off and on for many years. I'm so glad you brought this up. It's fantastic. And, we all kill to eat. Like, we all eat and we all kill to eat, and all the animals kill to eat. And, whatever their particular species uses. And I try to, well, I would like to play even more in the experiment of asking my body what it wants this week. I try to do that when I'm shopping, and I'm going through a transition right now where my body is saying, I would like to move away from those foods and focus on these foods. So I'm like, okay, I'll do the experiment and we'll see how we feel. And but you've presented a really great rarefied idea of how to explode that whole game. And so I'm really interested in that. And where was I going to go with this? Yes. So animals all, we all have to kill to eat, and it's part of the program here, but we don't have to be programmed into it as humans the way we have been. And I really like the way you're presenting new options and possibilities and a process to explore rather than the programming we've had, which is maybe counterproductive to the functioning of our systems. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's where I always people are going, well, what are you saying, Shifu? Does that mean I can't eat animals? I'm like, look, if you're in that journey and that's where you're at this present moment, you need to honor and value what it is that's been sacrificed for you,
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate and have that relationship. And in all the years I've done this, when people have that relationship with that gift that's being handed to them with their very meal, the spirit of that animal will actually be very grateful because it's that validation. And
Yes.
whatever they've been through, they will be. I want you to, because you're grateful, because you are appreciative. I offer this to you wholeheartedly. And
Yeah.
so it's a really weird connection, but it's instantaneous. But then
Yes, it doesn't really matter. Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, we think that the animal will be sad because it's being sacrificed for us, whereas the plant won't care. It's just a plant. But I mean, it's either we appreciate whatever we've chosen that our body needs for that day or that week. And we're grateful that it has, allowed itself to no longer be in its, present form, but it'll be part of us. And that's just part of the way this design is. And I remember reading a story by my human nature communication teacher, Maya Kincaid, in one of her books, where she talked about being awakened by somebody talking to her, and she didn't know who it was, and it turned out it was the plants. And she's like, what do you want? Like, you're waking me up. And they said, well, we want to tell you, you think you're really in a certain state because you're vegetarian and you eat only vegetables, but we're the vegetables, and we don't like being gobbled up in a way that is without any consciousness and acknowledgement and respect. And can you breathe a bit and take a moment for what you're doing when we're being ingested? So it was just the same as you would want to apply to an animal, in terms of plant food, plants being food, anything being food is, we are improved if we take a moment to recognize that there's an exchange happening here and have just a moment of acceptance or respect or gratitude for that exchange. Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, that's so very important. And when you connect with it, you'll know. You'll inherently know. You will. It's a transformative thing. It may just be in a calming. It will present itself in your own translation of that. It may just be in a calming of your mental emotional state. It may be a physical charge. There is a variable different translations. It's for you to experience. But if anything, there will be a shift, and that will be very present. Whether it comes in a more deeper intuitive dialogue that you're having with the spirit of this offering, or it's just how it makes you feel, and it will present itself. And so, from the words of a dear friend of mine, Hans Wilhelm, he said, it's either contracting or expanding. Am I contracting or expanding? So, I mean, we can bring it right down to the simplicity of that, and understanding that will help you sort of navigate through your own experience just from that very understanding that what is it? Am I closing up or am I expanding from what it is? And that's that beautiful insight that you get, that that's transmuted through your physicality, your humanness, this neuroplasticity, this soft technology we call I call it the tuning fork of the universe. And you have that to really record your experience. And so then you get a better way of deciphering things, because I always remind people it comes down to three things: a thought, feeling, and an emotion are the sum of all things. And then that could be translated into your past, present, and future. And what are you going to use that secret ingredients for in creating your reality? And it really becomes interesting, because a lot of people will not see the actual separation between the emotion and the feeling and say that they're two of the same, when in actuality one triggers the other. And it's so quickly sort of compressed, because we're not, these systems that we possess is a facet of consciousness. You cannot find an AI, super technology, high-tech computer, anything within technology in the next million years that's going to come close to what you possess in this physical body. So its processes, the way it processes things is instantaneous, which is how things are created in the present moment.
That's so good. And I love the way you said, someone who reduces it to, is this contraction or expansion? In communication with animals, where it sometimes can get very complicated and the questions might be complex. If there's an animal who suffered an injury, for example, maybe going through surgery, there can be complex questions, and sometimes it helps to just reduce it to a question where the answer is yes or no. Are you in pain? Yes or no?
And that's a great way to use the intuitive state to get a very clear case of, what is yes or no. It's funny. It was just brought up to me from one of the spirits of one of my dogs, and he reminded me of this moment when I had this handyman at the house, and this guy, through his own admission at another point, had shared with me that he would beat his dogs. He doesn't like dogs. Keep the dogs away from me. Don't I'm doing this. And I was like, that was the admission of, that was enough for me to go, we don't need to be working together. But in that same moment of admission, my dog literally wanted to literally rip this guy into shreds, which indicates an understanding that he was threatened, realizing that this guy had taken the life of other dogs.
Oh.
Sensitivity was really there. But I mean, that admission was enough for me to go, well, it's like the cook in the kitchen. You don't go to a restaurant where the representation of the waitress will transpire through to the chef, and the way the food is cooked is what you're ingesting and bringing into your own conscious collective of this physical body. So you want something, we always talk about, you want mom to make her favorite cookies, because they're made with love. They're imprinted with this incredible essence of unconditional love and acceptance, which brings me to being a parent. It's like the biggest conscious awakening is realizing this little guru that's presented to you as this defenseless being that cannot fend for itself, cannot feed itself. It needs all the nurturing, all the gratitude, the value, the appreciation that comes with being the ambassador or parent to this incredible being. And with that comes this instant, as a parent, unconditional acceptance that I would give my life for this being. Not thinking. It's just a selfless, that state. You cannot virtue signal this selflessness that we speak of. It's within all of us. But I personally believe, through my own journey, that being a parent is a great level up for most people. Having the ability to share in this incredible being, and then witnessing what happens within yourself without even processing anything. You just, all of a sudden, it's like, what wouldn't I do? There's nothing I wouldn't do. That is a selflessness that everyone has the ability to obtain. Yet there might be a few little rocky roads or rough ways that we're getting to the same path. And I honestly believe that, if you're a parent, you're, another incredible gift from the universe that is sharing this with you, an enlightenment, a level of consciousness, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, well, we get to experience that with our children, and it's an ongoing experiment you can't step out of. And so, there are good days and bad days, but it is beautiful to see the bonds we create with other little human beings and what evolves from that. And I'm really grateful that I, went through that myself, and that I have a family, that we are several, that there are children and me and the father, and that we're going through life together. It's really beautiful to have that unconditional underlying essence to share with other human beings. And there are pets who I think reach that same place with their people, where they would die for their people and their people would give their life for them. I know people who have stepped in to save a dog being attacked. And those stories, when they've come to me, have always been much grander stories about much more profound things that were actually happening in the greater cosmic environment of that family and that person. And it's really beautiful to see, like a person who stepped in to save her dog, who found out later her lesson from that was the dog was dying. She didn't know that yet. The dog knew that, and the dog had actually put out a call to wild dogs to come and take it out fast. It didn't want a slow death. She intervened and saved it, and then found out much later that her dog was chronically ill and would die. And she knew, because they got to live out what happened next. She taught me that lesson, and I learned that from her. I learned that from Anne about the story of Cody, that dogs, maybe other animals too, will put out a call to go fast if that's their wish, if they don't want a slow death and it looks like their person is going to intervene. So she intervened in the fast one, but what the dog didn't want was an intervention through the veterinary system that would slow down his death. And so she intervened, right? So the dog ended up with interventions, but she knew that then. She knew that Cody wanted to go fast. And so then she could, help him through what came next. And I learned, because I applied that to other stories that came to me, I saw where other dogs were also putting out the call, and where and the reverse, where people have intervened where the dog's been attacked, and it's turned out that the dog was saving the human's life in some way. So you never know until the whole story is over and unpacked. But I'm really grateful that I've seen these extreme situations where people have shared their stories with me, where they've tried to save the life of a dog, or a dog has tried to save the life of a person. They're really dramatic, serious moments that we share with these other beings.
Yeah, it's almost like the attachment to what you consider a sort of materialist sort of 3D reality, which is attaching to this humanness. And so when you within Taoism, we remind you, when you believe you are not of this body, what can harm you? And then all of a sudden you have an awakening, a whole different viewpoint, and you're not consumed with the counting of the seconds and the minutes of your imminent mortality, your death. And, so people spend their whole lives in fear of dying, yet they never live. And they never get to experience this conscious collective. They're consumed with the mechanisms that are limited, that are created by their experience as being the 3D, being the pursuit of something that's outside of myself, that everything is within you. And we have another verse from the Tao Te Ching. When you let the man who's never left his village, let him know he's seen the world, it's all within you. You do not have to be going anywhere. Now, of course, the realization of the shackles of being human, being subject to your emotions, being subject to the human condition is part of your journey. Yet when you ascend in a higher state of awareness, you can easily, like underwear, experience the human experience, the journey of some of your life experiences, and also ascend to where Madii and myself get to help others become more aware. And so that journey of this in service, this selfless state where it's just all about, the collective consciousness, it starts to resonate through your very action or inaction, as we would put it within Taoism, Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort. And so that's that flow state that people talk about. And, that's present for everyone. And so when we don't get distracted, all that stuff becomes very, very, Latsu will always, people were going on about the what's going on with 2024, death and destruction, brimstone and fire coming out of the sky. And he recently just answered that, and he was like, okay, just imagine this. You're a grain of sand asking the beach, what are you doing today? Now, if you dissolve back into the beach, you're one with all things. No separation. And so, the simplicity is just so profound. Yet we as individuals want to separate ourselves. And that's where, through our admission, my admission, Madii's admission, understanding that, your development skill set, your acquiring of this sensory perception is for you to determine, for you to decide how that entropy level is, that transition to a state of awareness is. It can be long, it can be short, it can be hard, it can be easy. It's all subject to your experience. But as you start to continue this journey by listening to incredible conversations like the one we've had today, you will becoming very clear that anything is possible. And through the mastery of Madii, through the mastery of myself, just bringing and raising the consciousness collective, people have these epiphanies. They listen to this conversation and they're instantly aware of something that wasn't effectively as another part of the collective. And they're like, oh my goodness. I always tell people, it's like, this is consciousness. Imagine putting this cup on a table and walking past it every day. And the second you stop seeing a different facet of that, a different way to look at it or describe it, your consciousness stops. That's how simple it is. That's how easy it is. The experience of expansion has been put on pause when you go, yeah, it's just a cup. Yeah, just a cup. It's the same. It's white. It's got some blue writing on it. It's a red handle. No, you can literally spend every day experiencing something new about your environment, about your relationships, about your very experience, about your own possession, which separates you. But the idea of possessing this physical body and what it actually means, you may look at it a million times. As long as you continually see some other facet of it, some other way to describe it, you are doing this. You're expanding the way that things are being perceived, which would then fall into this conscious collective and this, what we call the moment, this present moment, the Wu Ji, between the breath in and the breath out is the stillness. And that's where people talk about, you know, 0 point energy is between the infinity, so the symbol of infinite of infinity. There is this 0 point right in the center of it.
Yeah.
And when you look at things, they're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. The truth to everything is right there.
Really beautiful. Thanks.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation, my friend. I can't thank the universe enough for bringing you into my life, and I'm very, very grateful to have created a new friendship, a reuniting, really, of a bond that I intuitively know we've had many lifetimes before, and this is sort of presenting itself here today, and I'm just very grateful.
Well, I really appreciate this opportunity to share about animal and nature communication, and the little journey that you've taken me on today has been magical. Thank you so much. I have so many new ideas and thoughts to consider from our conversation.
Well, again, I can't thank you enough for everything that you shared with me today. It's like another realization is we always remind ourselves the student is the teacher is the student. The second that is lost from your very perception is where things end. That there's never a moment that you can't be open to a greater consciousness, and that just comes in all forms. And I would have to say I'm very grateful that all the things that you shared and have opened my consciousness to today, and a whole different way to look at all things. And this is the beautiful part about the journey that we're both on, and that all of us are on, really. I would ask in closing, what is your definition of consciousness?
Okay, I use the term, I do. What's the definition? For me at the moment, because it evolves over time, but today what it means to me is the opportunity to experience reality ever more richly, moment to moment, with no limits.
Amazing. I never ever, I get so excited when I hear people share their expression of consciousness. It's never the same. It's always a different facet. And I mean, I always remind people, it's like consciousness is Madii sitting at one end of the table and me sitting at the other end of the table. There's an orange in the middle of the table, and you say tomato, I say tomato, but it's all part of that tapestry of consciousness.
Yes.
And, it's a beautiful. And in closing, I'm going to put all your social media under this podcast, and it'll first go on YouTube, and then it's going to go out across all platforms, probably a week or two after that. I want to ask you, what are you offering to the audience today? What can you share? What's going on with Madii today?
Well, people are welcome to contact me through my website for consultations. And I also offer training if anybody wants mentoring, because you do it yourself. But it's my experience that for private lessons, sort of a dog in the background. But yes.
He's excited.
I offer private lessons because I like to tailor them to whatever the strengths are and talents are of the individual, whatever the life path is presenting for that individual. So I offer one-on-one training and consultations with dogs, cats, horses, land, whatever you need. And that's all available on my website, which is madii.ca.
Absolutely beautiful. In closing, thank you so much, Madii, for sharing your time with us today. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.